Hi, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Off the Cuff. This week we're doing The Day the Earth Stood Still, starring Keanu Reeves. This one, just for reference, on Rotten Tomatoes has a 21% critic score and a 27% audience score, so really high up there. Uh, this one, it, it's going to be a tough one. I think this is one of the tougher watches, I think. There's still some good stuff here to watch, but overall, especially compared to the original, it just, I don't know, it's a little too bloated, it takes a little too long to get where it's trying to go. So let's take a look at some of the reviews and we'll see what we've got. This one from Emiliano Basile, 4 out of 10. Ultimately, the story of The Day the Earth Stood Still is as naive as the one from 1951, something that should have been adapted a little more to the times. Now, that's interesting. So, I this is probably one I might have to go and take a look at the whole review about, because naive is a really interesting way of wording it. It is a translation. It's a translated review from Spanish, so maybe it was a poor translation. But I don't know if naive is the right word I would use for that, specifically the original one. Not here to talk about the one from 1951, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure I would use the word naive. As far as being adapted to the times, I think this movie partially suffers from being adapted to modern times. Um, so in the original movie, if you haven't seen it, the reason it's called The Day the Earth Stood Still is the alien who comes down. Uh, he turns off all the power in the world for a certain amount of time. I think it's 24 hours. It's been a minute since I've watched, except for hospitals, emergency vehicles, and planes in the air. He turns off all the electricity. And it's basically to show the power that the aliens have, and where you would be without like electricity. That's why it's The Day the Earth Stood Still, but it kept going. This movie, the modern one, is more of The Day the Earth Stopped. um Still stood still kind of implies that it moves again. In the modern one, it's such a jarring difference. And it's got more of an environmentalism to it. Um, for good or bad, that's the message it's going with. It's an environmentalist message. So it's interesting to put to this reviewer has it as naive versus something else. Um, there's a lot there's a lot of descriptors I could give this movie that doesn't necessarily put it in a good light, but naive is not necessarily the one that I would use. This one from Mike Massey from Gone with the Twins, 3 out of 10. The computer animation and picture quality is significantly cleaner and more impressive than the low budget man in a foam suit costuming of the 1951 classic. Again, I only ever read the snippets, but I feel like your snippet should be more of indicative of your score. So if you're saying it's a 3 out of 10 and yet you give this like, oh, the animation is really good. In your snippet, you might want to go more into like why it's a 3 out of 10 as opposed to praising it. That's just me though. To that effect, I do think this movie does do a really good job with its effects for the most part. There's nothing that looks egregiously bad by any stretch of the imagination. Richard Propes from The Independent Critic, 1.5 out of 4. If you look past the fairly cool special effects, you're going to see a film at war with itself. It's an interesting way of wording it. I think at war with itself is such an interesting way of wording it. It's not. I I can see what he's saying as far as you have a lot of different themes you have going on, and none of them come through super well aside from the environmentalism one. Um, but the relationship between Jaden Smith and his stepmom, again trying to destroy the planet, and all this, like, and then the government takes control of the robot, um, to try and study it, and it doesn't work out for a lot of different reasons. There's a lot going on. At war with itself, though, it's an interesting way of wording it. I'm not sure if I would go that far. Maybe I would say it's a little muddled. It doesn't have as clear of a theme as you want, and it's a little bloated. It's a 2 hour ish, 2.5 hour runtime movie, and I don't think it actually needs that long. I think it just stuffed a little too much into it. Maddie Lucas from The Dispatch, 2 out of 4, doesn't have a single practical reason for its existence. For a 2 out of 4, that's actually you give it a 2 out of 4, but it sounds more like a 1 or a half. I think when you compare it to the original, it's really hard. Maybe if you look at it in a vacuum and you look at it from when it came out, which I believe was 2008 or 2009, for its time, it again pushing the environmental message. You could see that you could say that it's trying to do its part in that sort of movement. But when you're comparing it to the 1951 movie and all the ways and stuff it does there, it's hard. It's definitely a hard one. That's one of those things I wouldn't mind doing that. I'd like to do it for the channel if and when I have time, is start doing a series where we compare classic movies, the classic versions, and then the updated ones. I have a few movies in mind that would be really interesting to do, and this would be one of them. Because I really like the original Day the Earth Stood Still, but I'm also a big dumb Star Trek nerd. So like I love sci-fi in all of its shapes and sizes. Let's see. From Eileen Jones from The Exile. No score, but it says, The Day the Earth Stood Still is a great study in all things that can go wrong with a movie. The plot's all haywire, and the casting's rotten, and the dialogue's stupid, and the camera work's ugly, and the CGI sucks. It just keeps going. Yeah, I mean, I know I talked about this earlier. The plot is a little all over the place, just because I would say you have 3 distinct story threads in this movie. You have the stuff going on with Keanu Reeves' character and trying to destroy the planet and figuring out all that stuff. You have Jaden Smith and his stepmom figuring out their relationship. And then you have the government trying to analyze the robot. I think those are kind of or destroy the robot, depending on which part of the movie you're in. Those are your kind of 3 main threads, and it is kind of a lot. I think you could do, speaking of sci-fi, Star Trek in all of its incarnations was always really good at doing A-B storyline. So you had an A storyline, which is like the main premise of the episode, and then you have a B storyline you could jump back to take a look at. I think this movie, trying to do an ABC storyline, did not do a very good job. It ends up making the movie way too long, and a little too bloated. Let's do one more critic, and then we'll hop on over to the audience ones, because those I think are a little more fun. All right, this one from Allie Gray from The Shiznit, 2 out of 5. The Day the Earth Stood Still missed an opportunity for sure. You'll leave the cinema not enlightened or entertained, but wondering just how mankind's last stand could wind up being so fatally underwhelming. Interesting. Another one I guess I'd have to read the whole review for to figure out what they mean by that. So, unless they're talking about the very end, and of course spoilers, I talk about spoilers in this, sorry. There's like these nanite type robots going around and basically eating everything. The big set piece is them destroying Meadowlands Stadium in New Jersey, and there's like nothing they can do to stop it. They have to like get back to the ship, or one of the spheres. Basically, they have to get to the sphere in Central Park and try and stop it from there somehow, through science, sci-fi, right? So it ends up being just a big long chase scene, which I guess could be underwhelming. I think this is one of those movies where the climax of the movie is supposed to be Keanu Reeves' character realizing that the Earth is worth saving. So the climax is actually not the climax. It's like the 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 climax the movie is showing is the the tiny nanite robots eating everything. The actual climax of the movie is Keanu Reeves realizing that the Earth needs saving. The problem is the time between that and the end of the movie when they deal with all the nanites is just a little too long. I think it's about 20-ish minutes. Um versus something like The Gray, which I love. The climax of that movie is not the big fight with the wolves. Um it's a scene where Liam Neeson is looking at all the wallets of the people he's been with and realizing that they're not bad. And so sorry, spoilers for The Gray. Um but the time between his realizing that and the end of the movie is about 2 minutes, 2.5, 3 minutes at most. Whereas this movie, the quote unquote climax is like 20 minutes away. Like it's 20 minutes from the end. So you have a lot of time that could be quote unquote underwhelming. All right, let's hop on over to the audience reviews. And for anyone curious, I usually just take the reviews from the very top or like close to the top. I don't dig super far down. So most of the reviews end up being really recent. So like this one from Scott. This is from November 28th. Great beginning, good middle, terrible ending. Yeah, it has a really cool setup. It does a really good job keeping it going, and I agree. I think this review is pretty spot on, and it's a 3 out of 5. Great beginning, good middle, terrible ending. I mean, I think that's pretty spot on. They just couldn't land it. This one from Jason, half a star. Movie was okay, decent sci-fi, but wow, the child actor was terrible. Hopefully he left acting and went into some sort of trade work. Oh no. Again, I think Jaden Smith is one of the I think Jaden Smith did fine in this movie. I think there's a scene where he's at his dad's grave because his dad was in the military and he died before the movie even started. And he's in one of those military graveyard or military cemeteries where it's all of the very uniform looking crosses. And so it's just him standing in front. Like, I think there's some scenes where he had some really good acting moments. So I wouldn't necessarily say this movie is bad because of him. I feel like I review movies where the child actors are not, like, people knock on the child actors. There's this one. A lot of people knock Dakota Fanning's role in War of the Worlds with Tom Cruise, directed by Steven Spielberg. And then the child actor in The Last Legion. I think there was a few criticisms of that one too. Half a star from KL. Why does Hollywood always ruin wonderful old movies with terrible remakes? This movie is terrible and the acting stinks. Yeah, that's a whole other conversation. Why do we have to have remakes, and why do we have to go through remakes, and especially remakes of these sweetheart classic, like it's not even just like, oh, this movie is just old and you don't necessarily know that it came from an original. These are, if you know about movies, hey, Day the Earth Stood Still is kind of a big one in sci-fi. It's an interesting concept. That's one, maybe kind of like the biopic video that I made. If you haven't seen, you can check it out. I have some thoughts on biopic movies. Something else I've been thinking about maybe doing is a video on why we do remakes of classic movies. I think it'd be one thing if you did remakes of movies that are not as well known, or maybe they didn't get the run that they deserved, but we do these, oh my gosh, this is a 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10. This is an amazing movie. It makes me, and then we try and remake it. And it makes me wonder how long before we have a legitimate Lord of the Rings remake that isn't just trying to leech off of the Peter Jackson movies. And I'm not excited for that day. This one from Griffith. Lots of potential with a creepy cosmic sci-fi atmosphere. The VFX are dated but stylish and well lit. Reeves is what he always is, and I love him. A mysterious premise, yet the plot execution is very flat. Yeah, I don't think the visual effects are actually that dated, to be honest. I mean, it has been a minute since I've seen it, but it was one of the few things that I was like, oh, this. I mean, this looks pretty good even for today. But I'm also not a big effects snob, as far as they don't have to be perfect to entertain me. I can kind of fill in the blanks with my own imagination of what maybe the director was looking like before it ran out of budget, basically. Um, yeah, like I said in the video, Keanu Reeves is the main reason to watch this, and unfortunately, I mean, it shows his acting range, but he plays such a flat character in this movie. He doesn't emote hardly at all, which makes sense. He's an alien, right? Sorry, spoilers. This one from Mark, half a star. The original is one of my favorite films. I honestly thought remaking it with up to date concepts would be reasonable. This is god awful though. Story off, characters off, look off. John Cleese was the only good thing about this. Yeah, John Cleese was a really pleasant surprise, and I think he did a really good job as the professor. As far as the concepts are concerned, and remaking it in that mind, like I said earlier, it has this environmentalism message, which there's nothing wrong with necessarily, um, but I don't know how well they did getting it across and executing on that. It it worked for me in that I understood what they were trying to say, um, but overall, it didn't end up landing very well. A lot of knocking on Jaden Smith in this movie. Let's see. There are some positive ones here. This one from Shelley, 3.5 star. Keanu, Jennifer, and John, just watching them work. What's not to like? A sci-fi movie with a heart that we watch as a family while talking about the actions and consequences was worth our time, and we've seen it more than once. I mean, it's great. That's the one beautiful thing about like art in general, right? Like you can all have, everyone has an opinion and everyone can be a critic. And even if it's something that I have a hard time with, the fact that other people can see it and say, yeah, this was pretty good. This was, and being able, and it sounds like this person talks with, they watched it as a family. Um, this movie's pretty family friendly ish from what I remember. But being able to, look at it and glean something from it is really, really cool. I really like that. All right, let's do one more here because a lot of these are getting the same. A lot of talking about the visual effects and Jaden Smith and all that sort of stuff. This one on 1 star from Arthur. Weird film, just seemed a jumbled mess. The original film was more simple and easy to follow. Yeah, I agree with that overall. I think this movie tried to do a little too much for the time that it had. And I said earlier it was 2 hours. I actually just saw it was an hour and 45 minutes. And that just tells you that the movie feels like it was dragging really badly. Um, if I thought it felt like the same length as something like Exodus that I did earlier in the year. um, yeah, I think we'll call it there. Thank you all so much for listening. If you enjoy the podcast, if you like any of the videos, please like, comment, subscribe, all that fun jazz. Um, if you want to support the channel as a free or paid member, hop on over to Patreon. It's been such a crazy year. I'm going to try and finish up the rest of these by the end of the year, and I'm thinking of doing a list video, ranking all the movies I've reviewed this year, and it's been a crazy ride so far, even getting as far as we have. So yeah, thank you all so much. I really appreciate all of the love and support, even if it's just a view or a like or anything like that. It really means a lot. All right. Thank you all so much. I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care. I hope I see you in the next one.